temporarily tighten that. We're just going to pick the entire hub up with the jack bolts and get it centered up. Just got to make sure the shaft bolts are loose before you do this. You should basically just barely pass the edge of the hole there and you should be centered. That's pretty close right there. You want to go ahead and do your side? That's about it. Okay. Go ahead and start installing the spokes. You just want to make sure that they're all facing the same direction. We'll just do 2 for the time being so that we can rack the hub and get it squared up in the frame. Then we'll go back and install the rest of the spokes and align them. Just want to roughly hold that centered in the frame to tighten it for now. We'll go back and do a final alignment later. Okay, should be nice and balanced out now. Roughly centered in the frame. Okay. And we'll measure to the outside of the frame in 4 positions on both sides, on the top and bottom. Roughly 4 1/4. That's 4 1/2. You just want to measure as far out on the spoke as possible to get a true accurate measurement. That's 4 7/16. We'll just measure the top here. That is 4 inches exactly. And 4 1/4 here and 4 7/16 there. So we have 3/16 of an inch of difference. So half of that would be 3/32. That's what we need to move in that plane. So the first thing we do is loosen the shaft bolts again. Now these 2 bolts here that go into the shaft block, also want to loosen those. Now all we'll do is take the pry bar and stick between the shaft block and the frame and just pry it in the direction that we need, and you can see it shifts the entire hub inside the frame. We'll go ahead and tighten the shaft bolts back up and measure again. Obviously make sure that we use the same spoke as a reference point. Okay, that's at about 4 3/8. This one's about 4 7/16. So we're really within a 30-second there. So that's pretty good. 30-second is tolerable. Just want to snug those down really tight. Okay, so now we have it adjusted the way we want in that plane and locked down. Now again, using that same reference point, we'll again check the measurement in the other plane to see if we've affected it. Got about 4 1/2 there, so we're still right where we were, and we have a 1/2 inch differential between top and bottom, so we need to move about 1/4 inch. Again, we will back the shaft bolts off. Now at this point, to adjust it in that plane, we have the jack bolt here located underneath the shaft block. We just want to make sure that the jam nut is backed off. We'll go ahead and tighten up on this jack bolt until the measurement at the top and bottom is exactly the same. At that point, we know that we have the hub perfectly square in the frame. Then we'll tighten the shaft bolt back down. Alright, we now have 4 3/8 at the bottom. We'll rotate it to the top. And that's about a 1/16 difference. Now we have the same exact measurement in both planes, both side to side and top and bottom, so we can do a final tighten on the shaft bolt. Okay. Now you just want to go ahead and take your jam nut and run it all the way up to the top, locking the jack bolt in place with the jam nut so that it cannot move. It cannot back itself out or move up, so that we know that we've got this hub centered directly in the frame in both planes and nothing can move. Okay. Now that we've got the hub aligned and square in the frame, now we'll align each individual spoke to make the rotor, the wheel itself, true. The procedure there is just going to be a tape measure from either side to measure out to the outside of the edge frame again, and just make sure that we have the same measurement on both sides. You got there? 4.5? Just hold that right there. We'll go ahead and tighten this one up. If you have any difficulty keeping it on the measurement, you can tighten one bolt up so that it snugs it a bit, and then you can just kind of give it a fine adjustment. For the next one, okay, 4.5? Yep. Okay. Ready to go ahead and start installing the media. Now the media segments are all numbered. Like this would be piece number 2. So 1 goes on that side of it, 3 would go on the opposing side of it. This is actually piece number 1 over here. Say it's labeled 8, this is number 1, and then number 2 would be next in line. Just want to make sure there's a notch in your media segment. We want to make sure that that matches the break on the end of the spoke. So you're going to have the smooth side of the media segment down and the smooth side of the spoke sticking up. Okay. Pick up. Alright, come straight forward. Okay. Set down just a little bit. Okay. Place. Just want to make sure that we have it aligned in both spokes before we try to seat it in place. When we have it seated all the way in place, it should be flush with the spoke end. The media segment should be flush to the spoke end. Now we can go ahead. Okay. Hold the band segment on there. Start the bolts in. And then we'll do the same thing at the top of the segment. That one's actually going to have a hole instead of a slot. We'll just align the hole with the riv nut in the spoke end and install the bolt. Okay. Now we've got the bolt installed in each end. Now what we'll use to hold the wheel in place would be a ratchet strap. We're using a forklift. Obviously in the field you won't be able to do that, but all you need is any sort of high anchor point, the top of the cassette or anywhere else in the air handler to rig to high, so that you can hold the weight of the rotor itself when it's unbalanced. Okay, hold on. Go ahead and temporarily tighten this bolt for the purposes of holding the segment in place as we rotate it down. Okay. Just time before you get too far. Install a second strap. Just hang it right here on the frame so we can hold it in place so that we can install the next segment. Okay, go ahead and come down just a little bit more. Okay, hold on. We're doing it with a forklift and one strap, but you can just do it with 2 ratchet straps in the field. Okay, now we'll get media segment number 2. Up just a little bit. Okay, straight forward. Okay, come down. Then we just want to get the nose started in the track. Get on this side. Okay. Let's get on the other side. We'll go ahead and set it in place. Good. Now we'll install the next perimeter band segment. As we noted on the first one end has a hole and the other end has a slot. So since we've installed the first one with the slot down, that makes it the easiest way possible for us to install the next one. So all we have to do, and we can pry against the frame of the unit so that that band segment can slip behind the bolt, put on top of the previous band segment, and we've got that installed in place. Now we'll go ahead and start the next bolt at the top of this band segment into the next spoke. Now we're going to install 2 bolts to hold the band segments together, but leave them loose for the time being. We'll come back after we have all the segments in and then pull the whole thing together all at once after we have all the media segments installed. We will have to come back later and re-loosen the spoke bolt so that when we draw them together we can pull the whole segments together in a uniform manner so that it's all even and there's no gaps anywhere. Now that we have all the media installed, the next step will be to go ahead and tighten the periphery plates. You want to go around it 2 to 3 times, paying it down a little bit at a time so that it draws in evenly. Okay, now that we have the periphery plates completely tightened, we can go ahead and tighten up the spoke bolts now. Completely tightened, we can go ahead and go about installing the drive belt. Install our drive belt clip into one end. We can go ahead and start the screw, but don't tighten it completely. Get a piece of tape and tape the bolt onto the rotor. So that way we can just rotate the wheel around. And it wraps the belt for us. We just want to make sure that the belt lays flat with no twists in it. Okay, now as we prepare to cut it to length, I want to pick the drive motor up on its pulley where it rotates up, and we'll go ahead and install our tensioner spring. This clips to the bottom of the motor plate and then to a spring clip mounted to the frame. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and tighten that up all the way and see where the overlap is. It's really a bit of guesswork here. We want to cut a little bit more off from that due to the amount that the belt is going to stretch. But always be conservative when you cut it. You can always cut again if need be. Just want to make sure you cut right down the center of a hole on the belt material so that we have a good tight seam right here in the belt clip. Same process here, just install the screw into the other end of the belt and through the backer plate. Now that we've got it attached to the other end, we'll go ahead and tighten both screws down all the way. Okay. Now we're going to stretch the belt. Try to pull it all the stretch out of the belt that we can. Make rotate it a couple of feet, stretch it again. There we are, back to the front. Now we will unhook the tensioner spring, put the motor plate up, we'll have the belt back around the pulley, and reinstall the spring. At this point there should be tension holding the motor plate up, so we'll have to force it down and rehook it. Then we want to rotate the wheel around and let it track the belt back in place so it's in line with the pulley. Full revolution of the wheel. And what we want to make sure is that we have good belt tension here when the spring is fully compressed at the bottom. That's really the most important maintenance thing you can do, is to make sure that the belt always stays tight. That's what we're looking for right there. Then we'll just clip the excess screws off here, just so that they don't chew the pulley up from the back side of the belt clip, and we're good to go. This is our larger segmented energy recovery, and the seal attaches a bit differently. It actually attaches to the cassette frame and not the rotor. Just goes in place with these little clips, and all we want to do is we just want to push it out until it's just touching the rotor, but again, not compressed. So if we compress it too far like so, it's just going to wear that off. It's just going to chew it off, and then you're not going to have any seal material left. So if you do get a little bit of seal wear, that's okay. It'll only wear as far as it's going to go, and then you'll keep good seal, so long as you don't compress it. Again, we're going to show we have our purge right here. Our rotation is always going to be in the direction of that purge. So if you have one that's rotating opposite of that, you obviously have an issue. You need to rewire the motor or one of your controls. It should always be turning into the purge. Also there, we want to make sure that we have the rotor centered and trued up in the center of the frame so that it does turn smoothly like that. It should turn by hand. If it doesn't, you have an issue. You may have a bearing failure, or you may have it actually out of square in the frame, which would cause it to bind up on the casing itself. So we just want to make sure that it always turns good and free. Again, rotating that direction into the purge, and that we don't have our seals too tight. The seals do create quite a bit of drag, a bit of friction on there, and so they will bind the wheel up somewhat if you have them overly compressed. For additional energy recovery product information, please reference the ER Tech Manual on our website.